Vendors called out their wares. The sharp tang of dyes mingled with the ever-present scent of leather and wool, while the clatter of wooden carts echoed off cobblestones worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. Loomhaven was a city ruled by threads, by tailors and their guilds, whose magical garments shaped both power and fate. Elin moved silently between shadowed doorways and bustling stalls, a slight figure cloaked in rags that had seen better days. Her dark hair, tangled and unkempt, brushed against the rough fabric of her patched tunic as she crouched beside a pile of discarded cloth scraps. Fingers nimble and quick, she sifted through the remnants of enchanted garments, searching for anything of value. To others, these scraps were refuse, but to Elin, they were survival. A sharp cry from a nearby merchant startled her, but Elin's focus remained unbroken. Her sharp eyes caught a flicker of movement, a pale glow beneath a heap of torn fabric. Curious, she reached in, pulling free a small, irregular fragment that pulsed faintly with an otherworldly light. The threads shimmered with a subtle iridescence, unlike anything she had seen before. As her fingers closed around the fragment, warmth blossomed in her palm, spreading like liquid fire through her veins. Her breath caught, and she stumbled back against the brick wall, heart pounding. The magic was unlike the simple enchantments she knew. It felt alive, ancient, and deeply powerful. An awakening stirred within her, a dormant spark bursting into flame. Unbeknownst to Elin, eyes watched from the shadows. Cloaked figures, their garments marked with the sigil of the Guild of Weavers, whispered urgently among themselves. "The girl from the alleys," one murmured. "She holds the fragment. This changes everything." The guilds had long maintained a fragile dominance, weaving their influence through every layer of Loomhaven society. But the resurgence of the Threadwright legacy, the original creators of fabric magic, threatened that balance, and Elin, unwitting and untrained, was at the center. That night, Elin sought refuge atop a crumbling rooftop overlooking the sprawling city. Below, lanterns flickered, casting golden pools of light that danced along the narrow streets. The air was thick with smoke and secrets, and the distant murmur of the guild houses hummed like a living thing. She traced the glowing threads in her hand, feeling the pulse of magic entwining with her own heartbeat. Questions flooded her mind. What was this power? Why had it chosen her? And what dangers now shadowed her steps? In the quiet solitude above the city, Elin made a silent vow. She would uncover the secrets woven into the fragment, no matter the cost. For in a world ruled by threads and stitched lies, the fate of Loomhaven might just hinge on the hands of a street urchin who dared to dream beyond the fabric of her station. The first thread had been pulled, and the tapestry of destiny began to unravel. The city was awakening, but the alleys where she made her home were still cloaked in shadow. A place where the forgotten scraps of fabric and whispered secrets mingled in the cool air. She clutched the torn fragment of cloth she had found the day before, a shimmering scrap that seemed to pulse faintly with a magic she could not yet understand. With each step, the fragment's subtle glow beckoned her forward, guiding her toward a refuge she barely dared to hope for. Master Corwin's workshop was a small, cluttered room tucked between two larger, more imposing guild houses. A faded wooden sign above the door read simply Tailor, its paint chipped and worn. Elin hesitated outside, the scent of linen and mothballs drifting through the cracked window. Gathering her courage, she pushed open the door, and a bell tinkled softly overhead. Inside, the workshop was a sanctuary of threads and cloths. Spools of every color stacked haphazardly alongside bolts of fabric that seemed to hum with quiet potential. The walls were lined with sketches of intricate patterns and faded parchments covered in strange symbols. At a worn wooden table sat Master Corwin, his eyes lifting slowly behind thick spectacles as he regarded her with a mixture of suspicion and weary curiosity. "What brings you here, child?" he asked, voice gravelly but not unkind. Elin swallowed hard, but held the fragment out. "I found this, I think it's magic." Corwin's eyes narrowed as he took the cloth, his fingers trembling ever so slightly as he examined the shimmering threads. "Where did you get this?" "I don't know," Elin admitted. "It was in the market, among discarded scraps. But when I touched it, I felt something inside me." The old tailor's gaze softened. "Very few can sense the magic woven into fabric. You might have a gift or a curse." Over the next several hours, Elin stayed in the workshop, absorbing all Corwin was willing to teach. He began with the basics, how magic could be embedded into cloth, by weaving threads spun from rare materials enchanted by the guilds. He showed her simple stitching patterns that could summon a breeze or harden fabric into armor. The complexity of the craft was staggering, each stitch a calculated act of will and precision. "This is the Stitcher's Code," Corwin explained, tracing a finger over an ancient parchment, a sacred set of laws and techniques passed down through the guilds. "It governs not just how magic is sown, but who may wield it." Elin's eyes widened. "Why is it so secret?" "Power," Corwin said grimly. "The guilds guard their knowledge jealously. They use it to control the city and to keep the truth hidden." As the day wore on, Elin's questions grew bolder. She asked about the origins of fabric magic, about the bloodlines that carried it, and about the legends erased from history. Corwin hesitated, then revealed a faded family crest, embroidered faintly on a hidden corner of the fragment she carried, a symbol long thought lost, belonging to the Threadwrights. "They were the original creators of fabric magic," he whispered, "wiped from memory by the guilds. If you truly are one of them, you carry a dangerous legacy." The weight of his words settled over Elin like a heavy cloak. She felt the fragment pulse again, stronger this time, as if affirming the truth. Night fell, and the workshop grew quiet, except for the soft scratching of Corwin's needle and the steady breath of a girl who had just begun to unravel a fate far greater than she had ever imagined. Outside, unseen eyes lingered in the shadows, and the wheels of guild politics began to turn with new urgency. Elin's journey was only just beginning, and the Stitcher's Code had opened a door into a world woven with promises and peril. But what lay beyond that door was a tapestry still waiting to be woven, one she would have to stitch with her own hands, thread by thread. As she prepared for the challenges ahead, Elin knew one thing with certainty: the magic within her was no accident. It was a call to reclaim a legacy, to unweave the lies, and to stitch a new future from the frayed edges of the past. And with that resolve, she took her first true step into the dangerous, dazzling world of fabric magic. Elin moved cautiously, her breath shallow as she clutched the fragment of fabric tight against her chest. The torn cloth was unlike anything she had ever encountered. Its fibers shimmered faintly, as if alive, and the patterns sewn into it seemed to ripple beneath her fingertips. She ducked into the alcove of a forgotten shop, its windows dusty and cracked, the air thick with the scent of mothballs and old leather. The fragment's hidden message had teased her mind all day, a puzzle woven in stitches too precise to be mere decoration. Elin's eyes narrowed as she traced the delicate embroidery, her fingers careful not to disturb the fragile threads. Slowly, a series of symbols emerged, sigils that pulsed softly with latent magic. This could be it," she whispered, voice trembling with awe and dread. The coded message hinted at something ancient, a prophecy whispered in forgotten tongues, and buried beneath centuries of guild secrets. Meanwhile, high above the bustling streets in the opulent chambers beneath the guild hall, the air was thick with tension. The council of guildmasters gathered around a great table, its surface a tapestry of glowing threads that writhed like living serpents under their gaze. Each guild was represented, the weavers in deep blue and silver, the stitchers in crimson and gold, the tailors in emerald and onyx. Their faces were drawn and wary, eyes flickering with suspicion and fear. Master Varin, leader of the Guild of Weavers, leaned forward, his fingers steepled beneath a sharp chin. "These disturbances cannot be ignored," he said, his voice low and commanding. "The fabric of our control frays with every passing day." A murmur rippled through the council. "The street urchin," another voice said bitterly. "Elin, she carries that fragment. What if she is the key to the prophecy?" Varian's eyes gleamed with a calculating light. "Then we must watch her closely. If she truly holds the legacy of the Threadwrights, we cannot allow her to unravel our dominion." Back in the alley, Elin's thoughts raced. She'd barely escaped the guild enforcers last night, whispers of her name already spreading like wildfire. Her only ally, Sela, appeared suddenly at the alley's entrance, her expression grave. "They're watching, Elin. The weavers have eyes everywhere. We need to move now." Together, they slipped through the city's veins, weaving through crowded markets and narrow lanes. The clatter of wooden carts, the calls of vendors hawking enchanted threads, and the hum of everyday magic masked their hurried steps. Yet beneath the cacophony lay a deeper tension, a sense of being hunted. In the safety of a small workshop hidden beneath a pile of discarded cloth, Sela spread the fragment on a worn table. "Look here," she said, pointing to a sequence of stitches that glowed faintly under the lantern's light. "This is a cipher map encoded in fabric magic." Elin leaned in, heart pounding as the symbols began to reveal a path, one that led beneath the city itself. "A vault," she breathed. "Forbidden knowledge." Suddenly, a soft rustling outside shattered the fragile calm. Elin's hand darted to the small dagger at her belt. Shadows flitted past the window, and the unmistakable silhouette of a guild enforcer loomed just beyond the glass. "They're here," Elin whispered. "We have to disappear before they find us." The night air bit cold as they vanished into the labyrinth below. Loomhaven, the coded message, a beacon and a burden. The guild's shadows were long, and the threads of fate tangled tighter with every step. Elin's journey had only just begun, and the fabric of her world was about to unravel in ways she could never have imagined. As dawn threatened the horizon, Master Varin stood alone in his chamber, gazing at the fragment now held in his possession, a piece stolen by his spies. He traced the delicate embroidery with a gloved finger, a slow smile curling at the corners of his mouth. "Let the weaving begin," he murmured, his voice a vow and a warning. The city of Loomhaven stirred awake beneath a sky painted with pale gold, unaware that the very foundations of its power were shifting. Elin's discovery had set in motion a chain of events that would challenge the guilds, the magic they controlled, and the hidden bloodlines that could change everything. The game of shadows and threads was underway, and no one would emerge unscathed. The coded message pulsed softly in Elin's pack, its secrets waiting to be unraveled. But with every stitch she uncovered, the danger grew and the prophecy loomed ever closer. What fate awaited the girl who could unweave the entire magical system? Only the threads of time would tell. And so, beneath the looming towers and tangled alleys of Loomhaven, the battle for the soul of fabric magic began. Seated hunched over his old wooden table, Elin's fingers trembled slightly as they traced the intricate pattern sewn into the torn fragment of fabric she had found in the alleys. The stitches pulsed faintly, a secret language woven into the cloth's very fibers, waiting to be unraveled. "You see it now, don't you?" Merrick's voice was a hoarse whisper, laced with both caution and wonder. "The stitch isn't just decoration, it's a code. A map sewn into the very threads of history." Elin nodded, her eyes wide, reflecting the patchwork of glowing threads. She could feel an ancient pulse emanating from the fragment, like a heartbeat echoing from a long-forgotten past. But what does it mean? Where does it lead? Merrick shuffled closer, his gnarled fingers hovering just above the fabric, never daring to touch it outright. Beneath Loomhaven lies a labyrinth, built centuries ago by the first Threadwrights. They hid knowledge, their secrets, the guilds have desperately tried to erase. Determined, Elin packed what little she had and followed Merrick through the twisting back alleys and forgotten stairways that descended deep below the city. The air grew damp and heavy, thick with the scent of moss and dust disturbed after generations of silence. Her footsteps echoed against cold stone, and every shadow seemed to stretch into something alive. The labyrinth was a tangle of corridors and chambers, each more confounding than the last. Elin's fingers brushed against the walls, which were embedded with shimmering threads that glowed faintly in response to her presence. It was as if the very fabric of the city itself was alive beneath her feet. Suddenly, the passage ahead shimmered, and a figure materialized before her spectral guardian, woven entirely from strands of enchanted cloth. Its form flickered like a tapestry caught in a breeze, eyes glowing with an ethereal light. It blocked the passage silently, threads coiling and twisting, ready to ensnare. Elin's heart pounded. She reached into her satchel and withdrew the fragment, holding it aloft. A surge of warmth pulsed through her fingertips, and the ancient magic within the fabric responded. Slowly, she began to weave a counterspell, threading her own magic into the air, matching the Guardian's movements with precision. The Guardian hesitated, then recoiled as Elin's weaving began to unravel the tightly bound enchantments that powered it. With a final shimmer, it dissipated into a cascade of luminous threads, disappearing into the shadows. Beyond the Guardian lay the vault. The massive chamber was lined with shelves of ancient textiles, glowing scrolls, and delicate instruments. Each piece hummed with dormant magic, holding the stories and spells of the original Threadwright mages, who had once shaped the very foundation of fabric magic. Elin moved through the vault with reverence, her fingers brushing against the ancient cloths. The knowledge here was staggering. Techniques for weaving spells that could unmake enchantments, fabrics that could bend time, and patterns that held the power to reshape reality itself. Yet, the most profound revelation was a set of codices revealing how the guilds had rewritten history to suppress the Threadwright legacy and maintain their dominion. A quiet resolve settled over Elin. This knowledge was more than a treasure. It was a key to freedom. If wielded wisely, it could unravel the oppressive system that bound the kingdom. But the shadows of the guild were long and watchful. As Elin prepared to leave the vault, a faint whisper of silk against stone warned her she was not alone in her quest. Eyes unseen lurked in the darkness, and the threads of fate were beginning to fray. With the fragment clutched tightly and the vault's secrets burning in her mind, Elin ascended from the depths, stepping back into the labyrinth of Loomhaven with a new, dangerous purpose. The city above thrummed unaware, but the balance of power was shifting, thread by fragile thread, and Elin was ready to weave a new destiny. Elin's breath caught as her fingers brushed against the delicate threads of the tapestry before her. the fabric shimmering faintly under the flickering light of a lone lantern. The weaving pulsed with a quiet life, a silent story told in stitches and patterns lost to time. Master Aldrich stood behind her, his eyes reflecting a mixture of reverence and apprehension. "These threads," he whispered, "are the legacy of the Threadwrights, the original creators of fabric magic. They wove the very essence of this power into the cloth, binding it to the world itself. But their name was erased, their history folded away like a discarded hem." Elin's heart pounded as she absorbed the weight of the revelation. She was not merely a street urchin scraping by in Loomhaven's Alice. She was the last scion of an ancient bloodline, a living thread connecting the past to the present. "Why hide this from us?" Elin asked, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. Aldrich sighed, his gaze distant. "Because the guilds feared the Threadwright's power. They rewrote history to control fabric magic for their own ends, suppressing those who could unweave their carefully crafted order." The chamber seemed to close in as Elin processed the magnitude of her heritage. Her fingers tingled with anticipation and fear. The magic dormant within her stirred, eager to be awakened. Days turned into nights as Elin, under Aldrich's wary tutelage, began to experiment with her newfound abilities in the cluttered workshop of a forgotten tailor, cluttered with spools of enchanted thread and scraps of shimmering fabric. She learned to feel the pulse of magic woven into garments. It was unlike anything the guild taught tailors knew. Instead of binding magic tightly, Elin could gently untangle it, thread by thread, unraveling enchantments with a thought. One evening, under the glow of a waning moon filtered through cracked skylights, Elin took a cloak imbued with protective wards. Her hands glowed faintly as she traced invisible patterns, drawing the magic from the fabric. The cloak shimmered and then dissolved, its radiant sparks flickering like fireflies before fading into the night air. "Incredible," Mara exclaimed, watching from the shadows. "You're not just a tailor, you're a Threadwright." But power like hers could not remain hidden for long. Word spread quickly through the whispering alleys and gilded halls. Guildmaster Varin, leader of the dominant tailor guild, summoned a council. His eyes, cold and sharp as a needle's point, fixed on Elin as she was brought before them. "You defy the order that has held Loomhaven together for centuries," he declared, his voice a chilling blend of authority and menace. "Your claims are heresy. Your powers a threat to the balance we maintain." Elin met his gaze unflinchingly. "The balance you maintain is built on lies and fear. The Threadwright's legacy is not a Threadwitter's truth, and it will not be erased again." The room fell into a charged silence, the tension as taut as a drawn bowstring. Outside, the city's pulse quickened. Allies gathered quietly in shadowed corners, their hopes woven with Elin's defiance. Enemies sharpened their daggers, waiting for the moment to strike. Elin's journey had shifted irrevocably. She was no longer merely a survivor, she was a catalyst, a living, unraveling stitch in the vast tapestry of Loomhaven. The power to unweave magic was hers, but the consequences would ripple far beyond her own fate. As the city held its breath, Elin felt a surge of resolve. The threads of her bloodline pulled tight, guiding her toward a future woven with both peril and promise. The guilds had ruled for too long. Now, the true fabric of magic would be revealed, one stitch at a time. And with that, the game of threads had truly begun. The cold stone beneath her fingertips was rough, yet imbued with a strange warmth as Elin traced the ancient sigils carved into the chamber walls. Each mark told part of a story of creation, betrayal, and forgotten power. Her breath came steady now, confidence growing with every step deeper into her heritage. Master Aldrich's voice echoed softly. To unweave is to undo the lies spun by those who fear change. But it is also to risk losing the very fabric that holds our world together. Elin nodded, understanding the delicate balance she must maintain. The power to unravel magic was a double-edged needle, capable of freeing or destroying. In the days that followed, she gathered a small band of trusted allies, Mara, whose fierce loyalty and skilled hands complemented Elin's rare gift, and others, outcasts and apprentices, who believed in the promise of a new dawn. Together, they began to map the hidden patterns of the guild's power, preparing to challenge the tyranny woven into every stitch of Loomhaven's enchanted garments. But as Elin's influence grew, so did the dangers. Guild enforcers prowled the streets, their eyes searching for the girl who dared to unravel centuries of control. Secret meetings turned to whispered warnings, and every shadow seemed a threat. Yet, in the quiet moments when the city slept and the moonlight danced on silver threads, felt the strength of her ancestors coursing through her veins. She was a Threadwright, born to weave and unweave the destiny of fabric magic. The guilds had ruled for too long. Now, the true fabric of the world would be rewoven, and Elin would be the needle that stitched a new beginning. As the chapter closes, the tension between past and future hangs thick in the air. Elin's discovery of her bloodline and the awakening of her powers mark a turning point, not just for her, but for all of Loomhaven. The threads of revolution are tightening, and the coming conflict promises to unravel everything the guilds have built. The question remains, will Elin's newfound legacy empower her to reshape the kingdom, or will the forces arrayed against her snip the thread of hope before it can take hold? Only time will tell, and the fabric of fate is poised on the edge of the next stitch.